You're watching this because you need a network gateway that actually works for a busy office or a tech-savvy home, not just a shiny box with a long list of buzzwords. You've probably seen a dozen ads promising enterprise-grade security and blazing fast speeds, but you also know how easy it is to end up with a device that looks impressive on paper and then becomes a headache when you try to integrate it with the rest of your gear. That hesitation is real, especially when you're spending a chunk of money on something you expect to run 24/7 without constant tweaking. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Beast Dream Machine from Ubiquiti is positioned as a unified hyperscale cloud gateway, which basically means it tries to combine routing, firewall, intrusion detection, and even storage for logs into a single chassis. For many small to medium businesses, that all-in-one promise is exactly what they need: one device, one management interface, and a clear line of sight into what's happening on the network. But that also means you have to weigh up the trade-offs. You're putting a lot of responsibilities on a single piece of hardware, and if one part falters, the whole network feels it. First, let's talk about the kind of environment where the Beast Dream Machine actually shines. Imagine a co-working space with 10 to 20 workstations, a handful of VoIP phones, a couple of conference room TVs, and a few servers handling file sharing and a small internal web app. You need to keep the network secure, you want to see real-time threat alerts, and you'd love to have the logs stored locally so you can dig into them later without paying for a cloud subscription. The built-in 3.5-inch SATA drive gives you that on-premises log storage right out of the box, which is a practical win for anyone who's been forced to chase after third-party syslog servers just to meet compliance. Another real-world scenario is a power user's home lab. If you run a handful of virtual machines, a home media server, and maybe a small NAS, the 25 gigabits per second IPS/IDS throughput advertised here means you won't be bottlenecked by the firewall when you're moving large video files across the network. The device can sit as the central hub, handling the heavy lifting of threat inspection while you keep your routers and switches simple. Now, who should walk away without clicking Add to Cart? If you're a casual user who only needs basic Wi-Fi and a router for a few devices, you'll likely be overpaying. The Beast Dream Machine's strength lies in its security suite and log storage, not in the convenience of everyday home browsing. Also, if your organization already has a mature, multi-vendor security infrastructure, say, a dedicated Palo Alto firewall paired with a separate CM, adding another all-in-one box might create unnecessary overlap and management complexity. The practical strengths are fairly clear once you start using the unit. The first thing most people notice is the unified management interface. Instead of hopping between a separate router admin page, a firewall console, and a log viewer, you have a single dashboard where you can configure VLANs, set up firewall rules, and enable the CyberSecure protection powered by Proofpoint's expertise. In day-to-day operation, that reduces the mental overhead of remembering which device handles what. When an intrusion attempt is flagged, the alert pops up right there, and you can immediately see the offending IP address, the type of attack, and even drill down to the raw packet capture stored on the internal drive. Another hidden advantage is the ability to run the unit as a single unit high-availability pair. If you have two Beast Dream machines side by side, they can mirror each other, so if one fails, the other takes over without a noticeable outage. For a small office that can't afford a full-blown redundant network core, that feature offers a level of resilience that's usually reserved for larger enterprises. On the flip side, there are some practical weaknesses you'll bump into. First, the learning curve isn't trivial. Ubiquiti's software is powerful, but it assumes a certain level of networking knowledge. Setting up advanced IDS rules, tuning the thresholds to avoid false positives, or even just segmenting traffic into VLANs can take a few hours of trial and error if you're not already comfortable with concepts like subnetting and NAT. That's not a deal breaker, but it does mean you should budget time for initial configuration. Second, while the 25 gigabits per second throughput sounds massive, you'll rarely see that number in a typical small office environment. The real bottleneck often ends up being the internet connection you bring into the building, not the internal firewall processing speed. Some users have reported that the device's performance under sustained heavy load, think dozens of simultaneous VPN connections, can dip slightly, which is something to keep in mind if you expect a high number of remote workers connecting at once. Lastly, the hardware is a single unit that houses both the networking ASICs and the SATA drive. If the drive fails, you lose your log history unless you have a backup strategy. Ubiquiti doesn't bundle a hot swap drive bay, so you'll need to plan for periodic